He called himself the King of Kings of Africa and the Brother Leader. The world knew him as the Mad Dog. His rule was a blend of terror, gold, and sheer madness. Born in a Bedouin tent in 1942, Muammar Gaddafi grew up despising the monarchy and colonialism that kept his people in poverty. A military career was his path to power. At 27, he led a bloodless coup, overthrowing King Idris I. Initially, he was hailed as a hero. He promised to return Libya's wealth to the people by expelling Western corporations. His Green Book was to be a third world theory, beyond capitalism and communism. In reality, he created an impossibly complex system of direct democracy, where all real power remained with him and his family. His regime was built on fear. Dissent was punishable by death. Critics were publicly hanged in stadiums, and students who opposed him abroad were kidnapped and murdered. His personal guard consisted of female bodyguards. He claimed it was a symbol of female emancipation, but rumors spoke of a much darker reality. His eccentricity knew no bounds. While traveling, he lived in a Bedouin tent pitched inside five-star hotels, accompanied by a camel for fresh milk. He surrounded himself with foreign nurses, forcing them to memorize his Green Book, and claimed that AIDS was created by the CIA and Mossad. His aggression extended beyond Libya. His regime was linked to the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie in 1988, which killed 270 people. For sponsoring international terrorism, Ronald Reagan called him the Mad Dog of the Middle East and launched airstrikes on his compound. Gaddafi barely survived. In the 2000s, he tried to buy influence in Africa, spending billions to create a United States of Africa with his own golden dinar. His megalomania was everywhere. He built a monument of his giant fist, crushing an American fighter jet. He paid millions to stars like Beyoncé and Mariah Carey to perform at private parties for his family, though many later denied it. After his fall, his palaces revealed not only tons of gold and weapons, but also a personal scrapbook of US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, whom he called "My Dear African Black Woman." He sponsored terrorists worldwide, from the IRA in Ireland to Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines, striving to be the leader of a global revolution. In 2011, the Arab Spring reached Libya. A people tired of 42 years of dictatorship rose up in Benghazi. In response, Gaddafi promised to cleanse Libya inch by inch, house by house, street by street. A bloody civil war began. The international community, witnessing his troops' atrocities, imposed a no-fly zone. The rebels received international support. NATO airstrikes on his tanks and supply bases turned the tide of the war. His army began to retreat. In August 2011, rebels stormed Tripoli and overran his fortified Bab al-Azizia compound, the symbol of his power. The world saw his full megalomania, gilded weapons, absurd costumes, and opulence, showing a tyrant completely detached from his people. Gaddafi fled, went into hiding, and in his final addresses to the nation, still threatened and called the rebels rats. On October 20th, 2011, in his hometown of Sirte, he was found hiding in a drainage pipe. The brother leader was caught like an animal. His final moments were as brutal as his rule. He was killed on the spot by rebel fighters. The circumstances of his death are still disputed. His body was put on display in a meat freezer as a trophy, so thousands of Libyans could personally verify the dictator's death. Days later, he was secretly buried in the desert in an unmarked grave to prevent it from becoming a shrine. For many, his death symbolized freedom, but the euphoria was short-lived. The legacy of his 42-year rule proved more terrible than anyone imagined. He had destroyed all state institutions, leaving a power vacuum. The country descended into chaos, fracturing into warring clans and militias. His vast arsenals were looted, weapons flooded the region, strengthening terrorist groups across Africa. Without a strong state, Libya became a living hell. Slave markets and human trafficking across the Mediterranean flourished. Libya today has two governments, two armies. The country he once held together with an iron fist is torn in two. The economy, once one of Africa's wealthiest, lies in ruins. Oil production, the nation's lifeline, is constantly sabotaged and halted. The families of his regime's victims are still searching for the truth. Thousands vanished into his prisons, their fates unknown. Mass graves are still being found across Libya, silent testaments to his brutality, buried in the sand. The psychological scars of a generation have not healed. Those who survived torture in his dungeons, like Abu Salim prison, still scream at night. The post-Gaddafi chaos became a breeding ground for extremism. ISIS and Al-Qaeda held Libyan cities for years. An entire generation of Libyan children has grown up knowing nothing but war. They are the ultimate victims of the brother leader's legacy. A disturbing nostalgia for the Gaddafi era is growing online. Many, weary of war, remember his rule as a time of order, forgetting the terror. His ultimate legacy is a political culture where might and brutality rule. New leaders have adopted his methods, just without the absurd details. Libya's collapse as a state triggered a massive migration crisis in Europe, proving a tyrant's legacy can shape the fate of continents. The West, which helped topple Gaddafi, then largely abandoned Libya, leaving it to deal with the consequences on its own. How is this history taught in schools? Was he a bloody dictator or a strong leader? The nation cannot agree on its own story. Psychologists speak of collective trauma. How can you build trust in a society where for 42 years, neighbor informed on neighbor and sons vanished on a father's tip? Gaddafi's ghost still haunts Libya. He didn't just rule the country, he built a system that could not survive without him, and that was perhaps his most terrible revenge. Who do you think was history's most brutal ruler? Share in comments. Subscribe for more explorations of history's most compelling and dark figures.